I am currently in a weird parking garage in this like crazy lighting. It's like I'm in a back room somewhere. But what's going on, y'all? Elliot here from MovieFiles. I am back with another kind of before I see a movie thoughts. And the movie we're going to be seeing tonight is the new A24 film by the name of Undertone. Before we get into my pre-thoughts of this film, and obviously before we get into my review, thank you all for clicking on this video. Like, share, comment, consider subscribing. Let's get into my thoughts quickly before I get into this movie and before I get taken out in this creepy garage. But I have been inundated with ads this past month with A24's Undertone. Everyone that I've seen advertise this movie, talk about this movie, have said pretty much the same thing. It's good, but more importantly, it is one of the scariest movies in the past decade. A lot of hyperbole, a lot of hoopla. That's all I've been seeing. Scary, scary, scary. Great, great, great. We're going to find out here in a little bit. I'm a horror fan. If you all know me, science fiction, horror, my two favorite genres. We talk a lot about scary movies here. The last legit movie that got under my skin that I thought was scary was Hereditary. I know that's kind of a cliche answer, but it is the honest to God truth. I remember seeing that in 2018 and having sleep paralysis because I thought Toni Collette was going to come out of the corner of my bedroom and get me. But that was the last movie that really shook me, that really got under my skin, that really legit scared me. There's obviously been great horror movies, but not necessarily that have affected me to the level that Hereditary did. So is Undertone going to do that? I don't know. I know it's very much kind of an immersive experience. It's about a podcaster who doesn't really believe in like supernatural stuff, but her friend gives her a podcast and like creepy stuff starts happening. So I think it's like an hour and a half. Again, I've heard nothing but great things. So next time you all will see me, I will be giving you all my spoiler-free thoughts of A24's Undertone. Number one, is it a good movie? Is it worth checking out? Number two, is it one of the scariest films that I have possibly seen, that you all might have seen? We'll talk about that and much more when you all see me again. Wish me luck. Hopefully I make it to the theater because I'm in the back room, so I got to find the door to get into this theater. But I'll see you all on the other side. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. I just got done seeing A24's new horror film by the name of The Undertone. We talked about it up top, my anticipation. Is this the scariest movie of the decade? Is it worth checking out? Well, we're going to break it all down here in this spoiler-free review. But before we do so, again, I want to thank you all for clicking on this video, listening to this review, like, share, comment, consider subscribing, all that great stuff. I would really appreciate it. And also, we're going to have a sponsor for this video that we'll talk about a little bit later. But let's get into my thoughts about this damn movie. So, I always like to have my thoughts, but then kind of, take myself out of my own head and think about what worked in this film, even if I didn't think it all came together in a cohesive manner. Positively speaking, I saw this at an AMC that I haven't been to this theater in probably 7 years. Huge improvement from the last time I was here. I saw this in Adobe Theater. Great experience, great theater, great experience with how this film plays with audio. This is a very immersive, a very sensory, a very atmospheric type of movie. My comp for this movie would be Skinamarink, which I was not a fan of. I did a review of that film on my channel 4 years ago. Wasn't a fan, but I always like to say, even though I didn't like something, it is an experience. And I will say this, even though I'm not high on this movie, is something I'm happy that I was able to experience as a fan of cinema, as a fan of filmmaking. The experience of hearing all the sounds, the noises, the way that the film plays with the podcast experience, it was a really interesting experimental way to take in a story with this type of narrative without giving too much away. And honestly, there's not a lot to give away. Evie and Justin are podcasters. Evie is the one on the podcast who isn't a believer in, because their podcast is all about like paranormal activity stuff. She's not the believer. Justin is a little bit more easier to believe. Long story short, he gets an email from an anonymous person with 10 audio files, and they play the files over their podcast, and as each file they go through, crazy stuff goes on, and particularly with Evie, who is taking care of her mother who's dying of some unknown ailment. That's the movie. There you have it. So again, positively speaking, I like the sensory experience because it is, especially in Dolby, it enhances the experience. It makes you feel like you're Evie in the way that again, she's doing a podcast. So when she put her headphones on, we would go into the podcast mode. When she takes it out, all you hear is a click. So the noises, the dripping of the water, like all that stuff is like a really great experience for what they were going for. Other things that I liked about this film is, Jesus, it plays as a fan of like not just horror movies, but like just scary things and weird things, supernatural things. The idea of what they're experimenting with, child stories and songs played in reverse, and how that can warp your mind and get you nervous and scared and make you think about your childhood. Also, there's a religious angle that this film plays into. Doesn't really dive too deep into it, but it is something that kind of enhances the scares they were going for. So again, that goes into the pile of the experience. I don't want to just force things. That's about it for me, guys, as far as things that worked for me. Before we get into my criticisms with this movie, I want you all to check out the sponsor of today's review, and that is Factor.
You know, I'm going to be honest with you all. The older I have gotten, the less excited I get about going to the grocery store. I mean, from getting ready to driving to the store, finding parking, you get inside the store, they don't have the things you need, and when you're in there, it's packed and it just becomes one stressful time. But that's where Factor comes into play. Somewhere between the first warm weekend and realizing short season is getting close, eating well stops feeling optional. Factor is how I stopped letting a busy schedule be my excuse. Fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs. Ready in 2 minutes, no planning, no cooking. Just the other day, I had one insane schedule and I didn't have much time for a lunch, so I popped in this peanut tofu bowl that was to die for. I mean, I'm still thinking about it to the date. It was so delicious. Quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. Meals that fit your goals and schedule, healthier eating, calorie management, more protein. And let's talk about the variety here. I mean, we're talking about 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh and, of course, delicious throughout the various seasons. Options include high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and ready to eat salads. Plus, the new Muscle Pro collection supports strength and recovery perfect if you're getting back into a workout routine. And of course, we have to talk about the convenience. Always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes, no prep, no stress, so you can actually stick to your goals. Look, if you're like me, this is a perfect fit because if you have a busy schedule, you don't have time to prep your meals, cook your meals, Factor is your go-to option. Now, with that said, head over to factormeals.com/moviefiles50 off and use my special code MovieFiles50 off to get, check this out, 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Again, head over to factormeals.com/moviefiles50 off and use my special code MovieFiles50 off to get 50% off and a free breakfast for a year. Now, the offer is only valid to new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Again, head over to factormeals.com/moviefiles50 off and use my code MovieFiles50 off to get 50% off and a free breakfast for a year. Make healthier eating easy with Factor.
Alrighty, so getting into the things that didn't work for me, I would say this movie reminded me so much of a film that I think came out 4 years ago at this point by the name of Skinamarink. That was a movie that I did not enjoy at all, but it was, again, an experience, right? The imagination of what these kids, I don't know if you guys have seen Skinamarink or not, but putting yourself in the character's shoes and like living into the idea of what's behind the shadow, what's over there. Like it plays to that, but it's just it's a nonsensical movie because there's no story. And the same thing kind of applies here as far as at least there's a narrative thread of what Evie's experience with her relationship with her mother. If she were to have a kid, how would that look? And also her religious background. Like there is a narrative that the film is trying to play with, but it's unfortunately surrounded by a bunch of teases. This film is one big tease after another. Oh, what's that in the shadow? Oh, what's that noise? Cut to the next scene. It builds and builds to just nothing feels complete. Nothing feels satisfying. And I mentioned Skinamarink, but imagine a Skinamarink experience in podcast form, but also Paranormal Activity. Imagine watching Paranormal Activity without any visuals. You're just hearing all the audio of, I can't remember the character's name, but imagine Katie, and I can't remember her boyfriend's name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but imagine listening to that movie and not seeing the visuals, right? Because that enhances the experience. You're following these characters, you're seeing all the stuff that they're experiencing, but this film does that minus the character development, minus the caring of the characters. So it was just not a good experience from a film, like taking in, digesting a story, development, arcs. It doesn't have any of that at all, which is unfortunate. And I gotta say, man, like, and I don't know if this is, I sound like an old man. I don't know if this is a generational thing, but what scares me was not anything in this film. Loud noises, bumping noises, rattling of sound, like that doesn't scare me. That doesn't frighten me. Of course, if I'm at home and I'm experiencing that, that's a different story. But when you're in this film and you're trying to build to something and all you're doing is the repetitive things of, again, banging, slapping things, and then, kind of an Evil Dead kind of scare tactic they're trying to use with like speaking in backwards and like loud noises, speaking in loud noises, baby screaming, like that doesn't scare me. And that's what this film does over and over and over again. It's like, come on, man, is this it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick at this point of the podcast audio experience. And I know there's people that love these type of podcasts, right? The horror, the paranormal, and that's a part of the experience. That's just not an experience that I quite enjoy. I to be fair, I've never went down that rabbit hole, but the stuff I have experienced, not including this movie, it's just not something that bothers me. It's not something that scares me, right? So, yeah, and that's the whole movie. Again, there's a beginning, a middle, end, but we're not building to anything. So when you get to the end of the movie, you're just like, man, that sucks that it just didn't, the audio, the experience didn't match the narrative, the story, and just the overall, comprehension of like what a movie does and how it operates. So with all that being said, before I give you all my overall score and let you know, I guess you could tell at this point if I recommend it, which I might surprise you. Again, I want to take this time to thank you for watching or listening. Like, share, comment, subscribe. If you're listening to some podcasts, follow the podcast. I got a podcast, but it's not a spooky one. Not till maybe this, we'll see. But do all that. I would appreciate that. And also, again, check out the sponsor of today's video. You can find that in the description of this video. And again, thank you to Factor. All in all, the Undertone to me is overrated. It is not the scariest film you'll see. Not even the scariest film I've seen this year. But I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Because of the audio experience, because of experiencing it in Dolby, that enhanced my experience. So I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. Which is a bad movie on my scale, but this is one of those rare cases that even though it's a bad movie, I think if you are a fan of horror, if you're a fan of cinema, you're a fan of sensory experiences, I think it's worth checking out just for the experience, even if it's not an enjoyable experience, an enjoyable film. That's my thoughts on Undertone. Thank you all again. Many more reviews coming soon. I'm recording this on a Monday. Pretty soon, I'll be able to release my full review of Project Hail Mary. Ton of TV coverage with Paradise, The Pit, DTF St. Louis. We got Invincible, The Boys, Euphoria. So a lot of stuff coming soon. So what I'm saying is subscribe and follow for more. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe. And if you hear something bumping in the middle of the night, get out of the house. I'll see you all on the next breakdown.